get a little bit insight into how you picked your number of calories. So we know that calories expenditure is represented by a number that's TDEE, total daily energy expenditure, and based off of basically your body weight, your body composition, whether you're male or female, your activity levels, things of that nature, determines kind of how many calories that you're going to burn on a daily basis. Talk to us about that calculation that you did for yourself and how you went about selecting the overall caloric intake number that you picked for yourself.
I did it I took basically three numbers. Okay. I took first an equation number, so a formula number. So this is the kind of numbers you get from plugging your information into one of those online calculators. I used an equation called Mifflin-St. Jean, which is like clinically the best equation for determining your resting metabolic rate, and then you start to factor in your activity levels.
What's that formula called?
Mifflin-St. Jean. It's the formula that most calculators use. There's two. When we learned this in school, there's a couple of validated formulas. There's a lot, but the ones that I have seen the most, it's the Harris-Benedict and then Mifflin-St. Jean being like the most common ones. So I plugged that I'm using Chronometer to track my calories, and that's the one that they use. So I plugged that in, and it kind of gave me a specific number. So I took that number. I also have been wearing a Whoop. Are you familiar with a Whoop, which is a strap? Yeah. So a Whoop is, it tracks this, and I've been wearing this thing for like 6 years. So it has like historical data on me. So I took the averages of my calorie expenditure over the past 6 months. And then to put the cherry on top, last Friday, I did a metabolic analysis. So they plugged me into a metabolic machine. It's called a MedCart. You're breathing in through this tube, and it's measuring oxygen consumption and CO2 production, and it gives you a better estimate on your resting metabolic rate. And it also, the machine kind of gives you an estimate based on your activity levels and different things like that. So I took an average on that as like my resting or my total energy expenditure, or TDEE, which stands for total daily energy expenditure, which it's again an estimation of how many calories you're burning on a daily basis, considering everything that you do. And it's crazy because my metabolic analysis that I did on this machine was very similar to what my Whoop data was actually giving me in my average on the past 6 months, which for me, I tend to have a lower calorie expenditure than, I guess, like it's predictive, because my calorie equation from or like my calorie calculations from one of those calculators, which is something important for people to understand.
Yeah.
It actually showed me that my expenditure was at 2,500 calories. Well, my Whoop and also the metabolic analysis showed me that I was burning closer to 2,250 to 2,300 calories on a daily basis. So much lower than what the formula estimated.
I'm sorry, you said the formula was about 2,500 and then about 2,250?
Yes.
So about a 250 calorie discrepancy.
50 to 300 calorie discrepancy between the two.
Wow.
And then what I decided to do was, well, I'm going to take my numbers based on like the 2,200 and the one that I got from the metabolic analyzer. And I'm going to create, the reason I decided to do 2,000 calories, which is really the number that I'm aiming towards to, is because I still wanted to, because I work with a big weight loss population. It's still part of my goal right now is to lean out a little bit. I'm not doing this diet without purpose, but I'm like, I might as well. Right. So I decided to create a small deficit where I'm going to control it long enough that it's technically should be, adequate for me to kind of see some fat loss on both diets. And then over the course of 2 months, I think it's not necessarily something too extensive that it may hurt me. And at the same time, the deficit is not that big because it's only a couple hundred calories less than what my typical expenditure is, because I'm maintaining everything the same as far as activity. I'm not trying to like do extra cardio. I'm just doing exactly the same training, and I'm planning to keep it the same way over the next 2 to 3 months in the process.
Let's talk about the selection of a caloric deficit. Maybe a little bit for yourself, but also just for like generic person who's listening who wants to lose maybe somewhere between 5 and 25 pounds. You mentioned how this is a caloric deficit that should, over time, if done consistently, see a little bit of fat loss, like we mentioned before. Let's say it's about a 250 caloric deficit on average per day. Generally what I kind of think about as the appropriate daily caloric deficit to get results is somewhere around 200 to 600 on average per day. How would somebody think about selecting what the appropriate caloric deficit is for them?
Based on themselves. So let me explain how I actually teach this to people, how the way I coach my clients, but also the way I teach it if you're not being coached by someone. Which is I start with a calculator, and I mean like the one of those like calculators online, and I get a number, okay, based on my activity and things like that. So let's say that as a 2,500 calorie, it's the number that it gave me. Let's say I don't have the other two numbers in place. Now, what I typically do is I have my clients track their intake and their weight at the same time, and I try to get them to be as detailed as they can. And in the process, sometimes I have them to do old school and writing stuff down so they can be a little bit more specific on the things they're doing and not forgetting anything. Or sometimes I have it put it into a tracker like Chronometer, my Fitness Pal, or whatever. So then